I want to tell you about two people. One earns $96,000 a year, the other earns $53,000. If I asked you to guess which one sleeps better at night, which one opens their banking app without that familiar knot in their stomach, you'd probably guess the higher earner. You'd be wrong. The person making $53,000 has 10 months of expenses sitting in savings. They invest 20% of every paycheck. They have options, real ones. The kind that lets you say no to a bad job or yes to an unexpected opportunity without your whole financial life unraveling. The person making $96,000 is one missed paycheck away from a serious financial problem. Same neighborhood, same rent, roughly, almost double the income, and a fraction of the financial security. So what is actually going on here? Let me explain to you later. My name is Mary. I started this channel because I wanted to add a female voice to the finance space on YouTube as an accountant. And honestly, I kept noticing that most finance channels are run by men, but finance affects everyone. I've always found more interesting than the numbers themselves is the space between what people earn and what they actually end up keeping. That's what we talk about here, and one of the most consistent patterns I've noticed has nothing to do with salary, investing strategy, or even budgeting skill. It has to do with stuff, specifically how much of it people own and what that stuff is quietly costing them in ways they've never thought to calculate. Today, I want to walk you through something I think of as the minimalist money rules. Not because minimalism is a trend worth chasing, but because the people who quietly build financial security tend to share a very specific relationship with ownership. The first thing minimalists do differently. Before any purchase, they ask one question: how many times will I realistically use this? They take the price, divide it by that number, and that gives them the only honest measure of whether something is actually worth buying: the cost per use. A $200 jacket worn twice costs $100 per wear. A $400 jacket worn 200 times costs $2 per wear. The more expensive jacket is dramatically cheaper in any meaningful sense. This one calculation destroys most impulse purchases on the spot. That $280 kitchen gadget you'll use 4 times a year, $70 per use for a gadget. Meanwhile, a $35 tool you reach for every week costs under $1 per use within the first year. The math doesn't care about the marketing. It doesn't care that it looked incredible in the ad. It just tells you the truth, and the truth is usually enough to make you put it back on the shelf. The second thing, and it's a simple one, walk through your home and ask yourself honestly about each thing you own. If this disappeared tomorrow, would I actually go buy another one? Wouldn't it be convenient to have? Neither did it cost a lot. Would you spend money to replace it today, knowing what you now know about how often it actually gets used? For most items in most homes, the honest answer is no. The fondue set, the bread maker, the 3 sets of luggage when you really only use one, the clothes with the tags still on, the hobby equipment from the phase that lasted 4 months. These things exist through inertia, not intention. They drifted into your life and stayed because removing them felt like a task nobody had time for. But every single one of them is a small, quiet tax on your space, your attention, and your energy, paid daily for nothing. If the answer is no, it goes. That's the whole rule. It's simple and it works. The third thing is one most people resist. Never upgrade something that still works just because a newer version exists. This is one I see constantly, and it quietly costs people a fortune over a lifetime. People upgrade perfectly functional things because they're bored with them. The TV works beautifully, but the new model has slightly better color. The phone does everything they need, but the new release looks sleeker. The car is completely reliable, but it's a few years old now. These upgrades feel like progress. They're actually wealth destruction in disguise. The average person replaces their phone every 2 to 3 years, often while the previous one still works completely fine. Over a lifetime, that habit alone costs somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000. Apply that same pattern across every category where upgrade culture operates: cars, appliances, furniture, clothing, and the lifetime waste becomes genuinely staggering. The standard minimalists hold themselves to is simple. Something is functional until it genuinely cannot do its job anymore. Boredom isn't failure. Wanting the newer version isn't a failure. Working is enough, and working is a reason to keep something, full stop. The fourth thing is about systems, not willpower. Here's a truth about human behavior that I find really useful to just accept outright. We follow the path of least resistance. Always. That's not a flaw. It's just how we're wired. So the people who consistently save and invest don't rely on willpower. They build systems where the right choice is automatically the easy one. Friction for spending looks like removing saved card details from online stores, deleting shopping apps, a 24-hour rule before any non-essential purchase, not browsing stores unless you have something specific to buy. Ease for saving looks like automatic transfers on payday, investment contributions that leave your account before you even see them, keeping your everyday checking balance modest enough that large impulse purchases feel uncomfortable. That 24-hour rule alone is more powerful than it sounds. Most purchase urges simply don't survive a single night of sleep. The thing that felt urgent and necessary at 9 p.m. has usually faded completely by morning. Not because you white-knuckled your way through it, but because you just waited. Willpower runs out. Systems don't. The fifth thing is something high earners almost never do. They never define what enough looks like. So every time their income grows, their lifestyle quietly expands to match it. And their sense of financial progress stays exactly where it was before. People earning $300,000 can feel just as stretched as people earning $80,000. When they've let expectations grow at the same pace as income, the number changes, the feeling doesn't. The fix is to define enough before the money arrives. What kind of home is actually sufficient for your life? What car genuinely gets you where you need to go? What wardrobe do you actually wear? Write those answers down. Make them specific. Then treat them as your finish line rather than your starting point. Because here's what happens when someone defines enough at $60,000 of annual spending and then starts earning $150,000. The entire $90,000 difference goes directly toward financial freedom. Not gradually, not eventually, immediately every month on autopilot. That's how wealth builds fast. Not by earning dramatically more, but by refusing to let your lifestyle run ahead of your intentions. The sixth thing completely changes how you see money. The conventional way to measure wealth is to look at what you have. The house, the car, the visible markers of success. Minimalists measure it differently. They measure it by what they can choose. Can you leave a job that's making you miserable without everything falling apart? Can you take time off to handle something important? Can you say no to something that pays well but costs you your values? Can you retire before the traditional age if you want to? These choices are only available to people who've built real margin between their income and their expenses. The person earning $200,000 but spending $195,000 has almost no options. They're completely dependent on that income continuing. One disruption and everything becomes fragile. The person earning $80,000 but spending $45,000 has quietly built something most people never achieve: freedom of choice. Every purchase, when you look at it this way, is a trade. You're exchanging future options for a present object. Sometimes that's completely worth it. Often, when you frame it that way, it just isn't. Here's what I find genuinely fascinating about all of this. The relationship between owning less and having more money runs in both directions. Owning less creates more money. We've covered that. But as your savings grow and your investments build, something else happens. The psychological urge to accumulate starts to quiet down on its own. A lot of spending, more than people realize, is emotional. It's filling a gap, chasing a feeling of security or success that the spending can never actually deliver. When your bank account tells you a story of real financial strength, you don't need the stuff to tell that story for you. That's the cycle that the people who always seem to have money are living inside. Spending less creates real security. Real security removes the emotional drive to spend, which accelerates the saving, which deepens the security. The opposite cycle is just as self-reinforcing, but in entirely the wrong direction. If you want to get started with investing instead of spending money on unnecessary things, I've linked a few trusted brokerage platforms in the description, options that work for people in both the US and Canada. You don't need a lot to begin. Even small amounts invested automatically and left alone can grow into something real over time. Thanks for watching. And remember, money gets a lot less intimidating once you understand how it actually works. So keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep going. Until next time, decode it and make it work for you.